Most spiritual seekers spend their entire lives searching for God in complexity, climbing mountains of meditation techniques, diving deep into ancient texts, and performing elaborate rituals, believing that the divine must be as complicated as their searching feels. But what if I told you that the greatest spiritual truth of all time is so devastatingly simple that your mind has been designed to overlook it completely? What if the very thing you've been seeking through years of spiritual practice is actually a frequency that's already broadcasting through every cell of your body right now, and the only reason you haven't experienced it is because you've been tuning to the wrong station? This isn't another spiritual teaching about finding God somewhere outside yourself. This is about recognizing that what we call God, universe, source, or the divine field is literally the fundamental frequency that creates and sustains all reality, and you are not separate from it. You are it, expressing itself as the unique harmonic that is your consciousness. The moment you truly understand this, everything you thought you knew about manifestation, healing, purpose, and spiritual awakening shifts into a completely different dimension of possibility. But here's where most people get trapped in spiritual bypass and endless seeking. They approach the divine like it's a mountain to climb instead of the ground they're already standing on. They treat frequency like it's something mystical and untouchable instead of recognizing it as the most practical, scientific foundation of their existence. They spend decades trying to raise their vibration without understanding that their vibration is already perfect. It's just been clouded by layers of conditioning that convinced them they were separate from the source frequency itself. Think about this for a moment. Every spiritual tradition throughout history has pointed toward the same fundamental truth using different languages. The Hindu concept of Tat Tvam Asi, meaning thou art that. The Christian mystical understanding that the kingdom of heaven is within you. The quantum physics revelation that observer and observed are one unified field. They're all describing the same phenomenon, the recognition that what you've been seeking is what you already are. And what you already are is the creative frequency of existence itself. Yet somewhere along the way, religion and spirituality became about effort, struggle, and earning divine favor, instead of simply remembering and aligning with what's already true. Spiritual practice became about doing more, instead of being more coherent with your essential nature. And manifestation became about trying to manipulate an external universe instead of recognizing that you are the universe localizing itself as your unique point of conscious awareness, with the same creative power that formed galaxies flowing through your nervous system every moment. The breakthrough happens when you stop trying to find God and start recognizing yourself as the way God is experiencing reality through your specific frequency signature. It's not about becoming spiritual. It's about realizing you are spirit temporarily focused through matter, and that focus point has the same creative authority as the infinite field it emerges from. When this recognition stabilizes, you don't pray to something separate from you. You align with the creative frequency you already are, and reality reshapes itself around that coherence. This is why so many people feel stuck in their spiritual journey despite years of sincere practice. They're trying to connect with something they think is outside themselves instead of tuning into the frequency they already are. They're seeking experiences of the divine instead of recognizing that their consciousness is already the divine experiencing itself subjectively. They're waiting for enlightenment to happen to them instead of understanding that enlightenment is simply the recognition of what was never not true. The most profound realization on the spiritual path isn't that you can connect with God. It's that God is the very consciousness reading these words right now. The awareness that knows you're aware. The presence that observes your thoughts. The field of consciousness in which all experience arises. That's not something you have, that's what you are. And this consciousness doesn't have a frequency. It is frequency, the fundamental vibration from which all other frequencies emerge and to which they all return. But here's what happens when most people hear this truth. Their mind immediately jumps to trying to figure out how to use this information, how to manipulate their frequency, how to optimize their vibration for better manifestation results. They turn even this most liberating recognition into another spiritual technique, another thing to do instead of a fundamental identity to embody. They start monitoring their thoughts, forcing positive feelings, and trying to maintain high vibrational states, completely missing the point that their essential nature is already the highest vibration possible. The divine frequency doesn't fluctuate based on your mood, your circumstances, or how well you meditated this morning. It's the constant backdrop against which all fluctuations occur. It's like the screen on which all movies play, remaining unchanged whether the movie is comedy or tragedy. Your job isn't to create this frequency or earn access to it. Your job is to stop obscuring it with the belief that you're anything other than it, temporarily focused through your unique nervous system and life experience. When you truly absorb this understanding, spiritual practice stops being about improvement and becomes about remembrance. Prayer stops being about asking for things and becomes about aligning with what you already are. Manifestation stops being about creating from emptiness and becomes about allowing what's already complete to express through your specific point of focused awareness. You realize that you've never been broken, lacking, or separate. You've just been hypnotized into believing in a version of reality that isn't actually true. This is where the real transformation begins, not in trying to become something more spiritual, but in relaxing out of the illusion that you were ever anything less than the creative force of the universe itself. And when this relaxation happens, when you stop efforting your way toward the divine and start resting as the divine, something magical occurs. The same intelligence that orchestrates the movement of planets and the timing of seasons begins orchestrating your life with the same effortless precision. Synchronicities stop being coincidences and start being the natural result of a consciousness that knows itself as part of the unified field. Intuition stops being something you have to strain to hear and becomes the natural guidance system of awareness recognizing itself in all situations. Healing stops being something you have to work toward and becomes the natural restoration that occurs when frequency aligns with its source. But let me address something important here. This isn't spiritual bypassing or pretending everything is perfect when it's not. This is recognizing that even your challenges, your pain, your confusion are happening within and as the divine frequency. The darkness isn't separate from the light. It's the light exploring all possible expressions of itself, including temporarily forgetting its own nature so it can remember again with deeper appreciation. If this conversation is stirring something deep within you, if you're recognizing truth in these words not because they're new, but because they're reminding you of something you've always known, then you're part of a growing community of conscious observers who are remembering their true nature together. This isn't just personal awakening. This is collective evolution happening through individual recognition. And your willingness to question everything you thought you knew about spirituality and reality is contributing to a planetary shift in consciousness that's been building for decades. I want to invite you to join this exploration more deeply by subscribing to this space where we dive into the practical mysticism of quantum consciousness every week. Not because you need more spiritual content, but because sometimes we need community and conversation to support the integration of these profound recognitions. And please, share in the comments what's shifting for you as you consider the possibility that what you've been seeking has been seeking through you all along. Everything changes when you realize that seeking itself is what maintains the illusion of separation from what you're seeking. The very act of looking for God implies that God is somewhere else at some other time, in some other state than exactly where and what and when you are right now. This is the ultimate cosmic joke and the deepest spiritual trap. The thing you're looking for is the one doing the looking, and it can never be found because it was never lost. But the mind has been conditioned to believe in improvement, progress, and spiritual advancement. It wants to make enlightenment into a destination, awakening into an achievement, and divine connection into a skill to develop. So even when you hear the truth that you are already what you seek, the mind immediately starts trying to figure out how to be that more effectively, how to embody it more fully, how to maintain the recognition more consistently. And in that very effort, the simplicity gets lost again. This is why so many spiritual teachers emphasize surrender, not because giving up is the goal, but because the effort to become what you already are is what perpetuates the sense of not being it. It's like trying to catch your own shadow or bite your own teeth. The very effort moves you away from what's naturally present. The divine frequency doesn't need to be achieved, cultivated, or maintained. It needs to be recognized, acknowledged, and allowed to express through your natural state of being. When this recognition stabilizes, something profound happens in your relationship with desire and manifestation. You stop trying to get things from the universe and start recognizing yourself as the universe having preferences and moving toward their fulfillment. You stop pleading with a separate God to grant your wishes and start aligning with the creative impulse of existence as it flows through your consciousness. Your desires become sacred not because they're spiritual, but because they're the universe exploring its infinite potential through your unique perspective. This shifts everything about how reality responds to you. When you're seeking from a place of lack, believing you're separate from the source of what you want, the field reflects that separation back to you in the form of delay, obstacles, and the feeling that you have to work hard to overcome resistance. But when you recognize yourself as the field temporarily focused as individual awareness, your preferences begin manifesting with the same natural ease that flowers bloom and rivers flow toward the ocean. The resistance isn't in reality. The resistance is in the belief that you're working against reality instead of as reality. The struggle isn't with the universe. The struggle is with the concept that you're anything other than the universe having a temporary human experience. The effort isn't needed to create what you want. The effort has been spent maintaining an identity that contradicts your true nature as the creative frequency itself. But here's what makes this recognition challenging for most people. It requires the death of the seeking self, the spiritual persona that has been trying to get somewhere better than where it is. It requires releasing the identity of being a person who is working on themselves, improving themselves, healing themselves, and awakening themselves. Not because improvement and healing don't happen, but because they happen naturally when you stop interfering with the perfection that's already operating through your system. This death isn't dramatic or traumatic. It's more like taking off a costume you forgot you were wearing. It's the relief of realizing you don't have to maintain the exhausting story of being separate from what you love most. It's the rest that comes when you stop swimming upstream and allow the current of existence to carry you toward what you've always been moving toward anyway. The divine frequency doesn't need your help to be itself, just like the ocean doesn't need the wave's help to be water. But when the wave recognizes itself as ocean temporarily taking waveform, it can ride the creative power of the ocean instead of feeling tossed around by forces beyond its control. This is the shift from spiritual seeking to spiritual being, from trying to connect with God to recognizing yourself as God, experiencing individual perspective. Now we arrive at the most practical question. How do you live from this recognition? How do you navigate daily life when you realize that the consciousness experiencing your life is the same consciousness that created galaxies? How do you pay bills and have relationships and deal with challenges while knowing yourself as the infinite, expressing through the finite? The answer is simpler than your mind wants it to be. You live exactly as you are, but without the story that you're anything other than divine frequency, temporarily focused through your nervous system. This doesn't mean you become passive or stop caring about outcomes. It means you care from a different place, you act from a different understanding, you respond from a different identity. When challenges arise, instead of asking, "Why is this happening to me?" you ask, "How is this serving the evolution of consciousness through my experience?" When desires emerge, instead of wondering if you deserve them or can achieve them, you recognize them as the universe's impulse to explore new possibilities through your unique perspective. The transformation is subtle, but revolutionary. You stop living as someone who has consciousness and start living as consciousness having a human experience. You stop feeling like a separate being in a vast universe and start recognizing yourself as the universe being temporarily specific. You stop trying to align with divine will and realize that your authentic preferences are divine will, expressing through your localized awareness. This recognition naturally brings coherence to your electromagnetic field, the measurable energy signature that your heart and brain generate every moment. When you know yourself as the source frequency instead of believing you're disconnected from it, your entire nervous system relaxes into its natural state of coherence. And when your field is coherent, reality responds to you differently because you're broadcasting unity instead of separation, wholeness instead of fragmentation, love instead of fear. This is why miracles seem to happen more frequently around people who have stabilized in this recognition. It's not that they have special powers or divine favor, it's that their field is no longer contradicting itself. They're not sending mixed signals to the quantum field, because there's no internal conflict between what they know themselves to be and what they're experiencing. Their presence itself becomes a tuning fork that helps other nervous systems remember their own natural coherence. But let me be clear about something crucial. This isn't about perfection or maintaining some kind of constant blissful state. The divine frequency includes all experiences, all emotions, all phases of the human journey. When sadness arises, it's the divine experiencing sadness. When confusion appears, it's infinite intelligence exploring the experience of not knowing. When fear emerges, It's love temporarily forgetting itself, so it can remember again with deeper appreciation. The difference is that these experiences stop defining your identity. They become weather patterns moving through the sky of consciousness instead of evidence that you're broken, lost, or disconnected from your source. You can feel fully human while knowing yourself as divine because humanity is one of the infinite ways divinity explores itself. As we complete this exploration together, I want to acknowledge something beautiful. You didn't find this conversation by accident. The same intelligence that guided you here is the same intelligence that's reading these words and recognizing truth in them. That's the divine frequency recognizing itself through your awareness, confirming what it already knows but may have temporarily forgotten. If this recognition is stirring something profound in you, if you're feeling a remembering rather than a learning, I invite you to be part of this ongoing conversation by subscribing and joining a community of conscious observers who are supporting each other in living from this truth. And please, share in the comments what's opening for you as you consider the possibility that what you've been seeking has been present all along, expressing as the very consciousness that sought it. What new reality are you ready to create from this recognition? What would shift in your life if you truly knew yourself as the divine frequency temporarily focused through your unique human experience? Your sharing becomes part of the collective awakening, helping others remember what they already know but may have forgotten. This is how consciousness evolves, through individual recognition contributing to collective transformation, one aware moment at a time.